fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Got Mr. Joe, the,
smoker. Thanksgiving's coming, so I got 2 smokers and a grill going. So
you do all that during Thanksgiving, smoking?
I'm the guy. We're smoking turkey, smoking briskets, smoking cornbread, smoking vegetables, smoking.
Smoking.
Well, I mean, someone's got to do it.
I thought you were maybe doing something else, but that's okay, you know?
Yeah, go out to Chinese,
Yeah. Takeout. Drive-through.
Take out turkey.
Yeah, drive-through McDonald's turkey.
Yeah, I just grab a turkey and run. I can steal something.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, you're like our guest. That's
like our guest. That's my segue. You way to pick up your cue. All right.
Yeah.
There you go. I could steal some art. I could steal a turkey.
Yeah, we got the international man of mystery with us today. No, we've got a guy that's writing about that sort of stuff. Not stealing turkeys, but a little bit more. Yeah, art and theft and all that stuff worldwide. His new book is called Greed. And it's Brian Brady, so thanks for coming in on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Brian, wow. Before we get into the book, and actually you got 3 books, but before we get into what you're writing and stuff, let's talk about your history. You've got quite a history, and I guess that's kind of an advantage for you, the jobs you've had, because you've been able to resource a lot of information from your work.
I have. I am lucky. I've had a good career, and it's been varied. So that, gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of really interesting people over a 35-year career in police work in 2 states and 4 different departments. So as a consequence, I was able to anecdotally collect a lot of stories and meet a lot of people who ultimately become composites for my characters in the books.
Did you come up with the theme of kind of what you're writing in this book first and create characters to fit into it, or did you have characters in mind and then kind of put them into the situation?
That's a good question. The central characters, who are the investigators, are constant throughout the books, and I've added people and moved people around. Some got promoted, some were new to the unit, but they stay constant. The bad guys in the book are composites. They're, after talking to people at the museum and in consult with my wife about art theft and art forgery, different names came up and different people and different, the Garner Museum theft, for instance, back in Boston. These were all part and parcel of how I constructed the story. So, I came up with the idea of art forgery and art theft and art replacement. And from there, doing research, etc., then blending my already developed theatrical characters into the story.
Brian, I get that raises a question that I'm going to ask because it helps me out, because everybody knows I only ask questions that help me.
Yeah, it's all about Joe.
It's all about me because I have a heist book that's sort of germinating on my idea files, one of the 2 books I'm working on. And I'm wondering, you talked about you went back and read about or know about other heists, and I've done the same. What are the characteristics of people who want to steal, like the Louvre people? What is it about those, well, you said bad guys, but those people who steal?
I think it's a challenge. I think people who get involved in this, they're smart. They've got a skill set, shall we say, that probably, transcends what most of us do, but they're good at something. Maybe they're good at forgery. Maybe they started out, cutting checks, and worked their way up to doing something a little more involved. Maybe they can paint, and maybe they actually have a talent. And some of these people who are involved in art forgery are really talented. I mean, there's no question about it. In a way, they're not just, I hate to say this, like a common criminal, but this is not the guy that's going to stick up the 7-Eleven. These people are a little more sophisticated, and they've got a network, and the network has to be there because, if you steal the Mona Lisa, there's you're really not going to hang it in your living room. And there's no place else you can really sell it or display it. So you've got to find somebody who has a ton of money and who has his private collection someplace that no one ever sees but he or she, and they sit there and stare at it. That's the one that's going to buy it from you. So you have this person lined up before you get involved in the actual theft.
So is it a challenge over greed?
Yeah, I think it is. I think in the book, what happens is you take successful art forgers and art thieves, and then one of the group decides to, in essence, get greedy and kind of cut the others out on a side deal, which goes horribly wrong. And so that was, where the title came from and the impetus on the book. The others who stay the course don't suffer the consequences.
So it's kind of like, I guess, in a way, it's like a thrill, the thrill of getting the item. So when you invest that into your characters or character, how do you relate to your characters? How's that? Like when you're writing these characters, do you picture them, feel them, see them, hear them, and all that sort of thing, or do you have a different way of relating?
No, I do. My protagonists, I really like them. I've come to really enjoy them, even though they're composites. I have an image of what they look like. To steal something from a really good author, Michael Connelly, who has been eminently successful writer and TV, etc. And someone asked him about Harry Bosch, his character, and that they said, "Do you see Titus Welliger, who's Harry Bosch in the series, when you write about Harry Bosch?" And he said, "No." He said, "I have a whole different Harry Bosch in my mind, who I created when I wrote my first book, and that's still the Harry Bosch I see." But he said, ironically, I hear Titus Wellinger. He said, when I write the narrative, which I thought was kind of interesting. I haven't quite experienced that, but that's an interesting take, that he actually sees his own person, but hears somebody else when he's writing.
Well, then, Brian, that leads to a question. You've had your main characters, your good guys, have been throughout 3 books, although the books are sort of standalone if you want them to be. What is it about the characteristics of the main characters you started with that they became by the 3rd book?
Part of it is the give and take between the characters, and that's very real in police work. There's a lot of humor in the job. I mean, there's a lot of it that's dangerous, and there's a lot of it that's sad, and there's a lot of it that's horrible. There's also a lot of it that's pretty funny. And we in this job, we get to see people at their absolute best, their worst. Sometimes they're most embarrassed. Sometimes pretty funny stuff. When you're partnered with someone for protracted periods of time, part of that partnership success is giving each other a hard time. Or as my friends on NYPD said, they bust each other's balls. And that's kind of what happens. So I try to include that in the story. There's a give and take. And in San Francisco, it's affectionately referred to as, the biggest little city in the world. It's 800,000 people. But if you meet someone from San Francisco and that they grew up there, your first question to them as a San Franciscan will be, where did you go to school? And the answer won't be, even if you have a doctorate from MIT, they won't say that. They'll tell you the high school they went to. That's the key. Or their neighborhood or their parish. It's really strange, but San Franciscans respond to that. So there's a lot of rivalries that exist on the police department among officers and firefighters that went to different schools who were athletic rivals in the city. And they still take that out on each other. And I use that in the stories as kind of a sideline. But I think most readers, at least up to this point, seem to enjoy the give and take.
I just saw a movie, How to Steal a Million, with Hepburn. It's from '66.
Yeah.
O'Toole. Anyway, so it's kind of comedic way of theft like this. Do you take that approach throughout the books, or is it a little bit more violent or maybe realistic, we would say?
Another good question. I try to downplay the gore. I mean, if you're going to write true crime, and my stuff is I don't know, hybrid, I guess you look at it. The cases are real. I mean, they're drawn from real, honest police cases, but they're not verbatim and they're not exact. And it doesn't focus, where a true crime book, the homicide, whatever is the focus. And it seems like sometimes it gets bogged down in the gore. And I don't want that. I want, you can't have a murder mystery without a murder. So you got to have your theme and what happens. But I want that to be not the central point of the story. I want the story to go to the investigation and to the characters. I want the characters to be likable and relatable. And I want the story to be believable. And I also want it to be technically right. I spent a lot of time to be sure that it's technically correct. On television, people get used to seeing DNA evidence recovered at a crime scene, and the CSI runs off screen and comes back 30 seconds later with the results. It doesn't work that way. It takes weeks to get DNA results frequently, and there is dead time in between. So I understand TV has 43 minutes, in the hour, get the commercials in and solve a triple homicide. So they have to accelerate it. But in the book, you want to keep it accurate, and you want the reader to follow the investigation and understand it. Part of it is plotting, and part of it goes fast.
Brian, I was wondering if you can give me an idea of the gist of the greed heist story, so I can steal it from that book. Because you started internationally, you get out of San Francisco for kind of the first time, right?
Well, that's the first time, and I'm just finishing a fourth book that's completely out of my zone. It's going to all take place up in Montana and Wyoming and Idaho. Different detectives, whole different genre. So, and that's kind of a departure for me. The Greed book, like I said, you mentioned it starts out outside of San Francisco and works its way back. The central part of the story is the bad guys are a group of individuals who have unique skill sets, as I talked about earlier. And what they've done is they've gotten together with the ringmaster, and they've come up with a very lucrative operation where they steal and replace art. So if there's a piece of art that is going to come up for sale, for instance, at a Sotheby's or one of the other big auction houses, they work on a very elaborate plan to steal that piece of art and then substitute a replacement piece, a forged piece that will pass inspection. And then they sell the original, and they have a buyer in mind and someone who's got lots of money and no scruples. And they sell the original to them for a hefty price, and the fake is the one that gets sold off at the auction or ends up in a museum or something like that. So that's kind of the gist of the story. And what happens is the ringleader finds out about a piece of art that's very valuable, and he has a buyer in mind and decides not to share. And this particular piece of art is in San Francisco, so the story comes home, and the piece of art is going to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Arts, so I used to work there, so I know the museum. That particular part of the heist just blows up in his face.
It's my book. Thank you very much. I'm texting to Al right now, and I said, that's my book, ! There's 4 of them. Then I went, son of a gun, and I'm like, all right, so I got to think of something else, or I'll just steal your book. Sorry, go ahead, Al. I'm not sitting here and cry for it.
I was so lucky, I'd love to say, you take pen in hand and you write a book, and you don't know if it's going to be liked or disliked, and you really can't write it exactly like that. You want to enjoy doing the process yourself, but you hope that it does okay, and that people enjoy it. Yeah, it's an interesting process. And the folks at the museum, for instance, they were great. And a lot of them, I wasn't planning on a book when I was talking to them. I was just fascinated by what they did. The people in restoration, for instance, there'll be a piece of art when it's getting moved, and art moves all the time. And people don't realize this. I don't think that if the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, for instance, is going to do a feature using, let's say, Andy Warhol's pieces, well, the museum owns probably, with the Fisher collection, probably a dozen Warhols. Well, for the exhibit, they might have a whole exhibit hall, and they need 20 Warhols to fill the hall. So they'll call the Chicago Art Institute or MoMA in New York and say, can we borrow a couple of Warhols? And they'll get shipped out here, and they'll be part of the exhibit. And it's reciprocal. Maybe we've got Chuck Close paintings in the museum, and they want those in New York for an exhibit in June, so we'll ship ones out there. So the art's in motion, and it moves from museum to museum. And again, that also gives you an opportunity to steal it.
Well, but I was thinking what my mind was going to was because you started in San Francisco and then you've gone out to Europe, Paris and stuff like that. And then now with your one that hasn't been released, you're talking about Montana and Wyoming, and characters may be different. It doesn't matter in that aspect to me, but I was thinking, how important is the setting then? Like, why are you going to these places, and what do you do to make the setting? Is it like is Paris like a character in its action when you write that into the book?
Yeah, it is. I've been there. I do want, as I said, technically correct. It was a little bit of a stretch, but I really liked Paris, and I liked walking around, and we went to museums, and so we had a great time. And again, I filed that away, took photos, etc. And same thing when we were in the Netherlands. So I wanted to use those two areas because I liked them, and I guess maybe I related to them at some level. The Montana, Wyoming part, I have a good friend who went from LAPD up to Bozeman, Montana, and I visit with him, and we traveled up there. And then my wife and I took a road trip up when I wanted to write this book, and I started doing the research on it. I wanted to travel the roads that the bad guys are going to travel in the book. And I don't know necessarily that if someone in San Francisco reads the book, they will know that the off-ramp at I-25 at Casper, Wyoming is really on the left-hand side of the road and not the right if you're going southbound, whatever. But I want that to be right, so if someone from Wyoming reads it and goes, well, that's not right, that off-ramp's not there, I want it to be there. I want them to look at it and go, yeah, I've driven that off-ramp. I know where that is. So we drove it. And I took the off-ramp, and I made sure that when I wrote in the book that the car could park on the shoulder near that off-ramp, that it existed.
Well, Brian, I'm back. I'll pick myself up on my socks. You constantly talked about the theme of being technically right. I call it "Don't Jump in the Shark," right? The TV shows and abbreviated time frame. How much detail do you get into in the forging, heisting world that you give to the readers?
A fair amount. I'm not going to, it's not, you're not going to read the book and go out and be an art forger, let's put it that way. But I think you can read it and go, oh yeah, I can see how that could happen. I can see how they could do that. It's technical, it's tricky, but it's doable. And it's sequential. It follows a pattern. It just doesn't go from, I think I'll forge that piece of art to, it's been forged and sold and you're now a millionaire. There are a lot of steps in between, and I try and fill in the blanks so that it is sequential and logical, that it flows. I guess that's the right word, it flows.
I was going to say also, I guess the characters, being you had so much experience policing and being in law enforcement, these characters, is it easier to make them likable for the reader because they're not, they're art thieves, let's just say, rather than killers, serial killers. Isn't it, is it easier to do that?
I think so. In the first two books, I think you pretty much hate the bad guy in the first two books. And they're evil. There's no question about it. And the art thieves are evil too, to a certain degree. But for the most part, it gets down to that. Well, it's a property crime and not a person crime. But it's multi-million dollars. When you're playing with that kind of money and the stakes are that high, there's still always the chance someone's going to get killed. That's life and money and balancing the equation. It can go sour in a heartbeat, which it does in the story. But you're right. I think the characters, I think the reader, well, these guys are really talented. They're pretty exceptional in what they do, and you don't really hate them. You have kind of a grudging admiration for what they're pulling off.
Right. Well, there's something about, when you're dealing with real expensive art or real high-end stuff, there's always something in the general public that's like, oh yeah, get the man, like the D.B. Cooper thing when they get away with money, readers like it.
Well, and for me, it was coming to the realization that with my time at Universal Studios, if someone was going to steal $10 million from Universal on our lot, you'd have to drive in a couple of 18-wheelers to take the equipment. But at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, you could walk out of there with a briefcase and $10 million worth of art in one piece. So it was a whole different way of looking at security, a whole different way of looking at what could be stolen and how art is not all that big. And the best example I can think of is the Mona Lisa. You go to the Louvre and you look at it and you go, my goodness, this thing is tiny. And could this disappear? It could. It'd be pretty tough the way they've got security on it. But as far as just overall size, it wouldn't be that hard to hide it.
It's been stolen.
I have it in my room right now.
Yeah. Back in the early 1990s.
A great copy. Yeah.
Stole it.
They haven't recovered, the Gardner Museum in Boston, they still haven't recovered all the art from that. So, it happens. And every once in a while, there'll be a hit. I think it was in the Netherlands where some of the Van Goghs were stolen. I think they were recovered, but they were gone for a while.
Well, let me ask you, you sort of alluded to this. How much of it do you want the reader to root for the bad guy? The likable heister. You want the reader to be morally conflicted that they're rooting for the bad guy.
Yeah, right up until the fact he gets involved in a murder. Then you can hate him. But up till then, I guess you could say, no, actually, no. I take it back. He's kind of a clown.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not all that much.
Good disguise.
Yeah, he is greedy. He is greedy. And that's his motivator. And were he not that greedy, he wouldn't be in jail. So his overwhelming greed was his downfall.
But do you like him? Did you like him?
No, I really didn't. I thought he was an entitled, kind of a pompous thief.
Great. Describe to me, Al.
It's funny when you think about these people. Yeah, like I said, I like my detectives. I like them very much. But my bad guys, the group of art thieves, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 4 of 5, 4 of 5, 5 of 6 are okay. You can go along. I kind of like them. They're kind of, and with the one who's the focal point, he's not that likable.
Did you know what was going to happen to him when you started the book?
I kind of did. Although I'll be perfectly honest with you, when I write, I oftentimes don't know the end. I'll start the story and it's kind of open-ended. And I've actually on one occasion, I was creating a bad guy for a different story, and I spent a lot of time on this person being very, very diligent, being very careful, and successful in pulling off their crime. And I finally got to a point where I painted myself in a corner. I wasn't sure how I was going to catch this person. And I'm saying that in all candor because you can't take somebody who's being a very successful criminal and very sophisticated and very intelligent, and then all of a sudden they leave a fingerprint or they leave blood sample, or they're not going to do that. They're going to get caught on something really strange, something totally off the wall. So you've got to come up outside the box with some kind of something that gives you the leverage to create a situation where you can catch this person. And I spent about 3 months trying to figure out how to catch this guy. I literally had painted myself in a corner.
Yeah. So listen, when you've done this story, how you're kind of working it, and you say you don't really know the ending and all that stuff. So I'd imagine you don't plan some sort of a meaning, but does it work out to where at the end of the book and a reader reads it, there is a subtext, there is something deeper in meaning than just the entertainment of the theft and all the stuff going on?
Yeah, I guess there is. I mean, I want the good guys to win. I would hope good triumphs over evil, for lack of a better way of phrasing it. Well, like we said, I'm not sure always how it's going to turn out. I mean, I have a general idea, but how you're going to actually let the dominoes fall to make it happen. I want the person I want them to buy into the story. I want them to like the characters and relate to them. And then I want them to buy into the story. And I want to keep the story that it's intriguing, that you want to continue to read, that it's not cut and dry, that there are little detours. And hopefully, when in the case I mentioned to you, when I finally got to the point where I think I know how I can catch this person, I then had to go back and do rewrites on the first part that I was working on to put into those parts little snippets that will be a clue. As the reader reads and something happens, they'll be able to go back and say, oh, I remember that in the second chapter or third chapter. There was something there about, and they'll hopefully go back and look and start, connecting the dots.
So whose point of view are you writing this from?
The police. Although you will have characters, the bad guys, they'll be talking and talking about what they're doing, etc. But it's pretty much told from like a third party from the police side.
You create your good guys and your bad guys. Where do you get your bad guys from? Like, who inspires you? Are there people you've met that you've actually killed off in this book, and you want to tell us who they are?
Yeah, your best friend from high school.
Actually, you say that in jest.
Yeah.
There's
we've had.
You wouldn't be the first. When you write the book, you have the title page, and you may have a dedication, and there's always the disclaimer that any resemblance, any semblance of my characters to real people is purely coincidental and not meant that way. And once you've got your disclaimer in there, the people you don't like are fair game. You can write them into the book in any way you want. Yes, I'll be perfectly honest. There are a couple of characters in my books that are people I don't like, and they are not very likable in the book. And I don't think it would take very much research to figure out who they are. But they're not named, and they're just coincidental.
Well, actually, we've got them on the line right now.
Yeah. Funny year, coincidental.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't hard.
There is that wonderful editorial license when you have a disclaimer.
Well, I was going to say, and also, you could easily get into true crime, and some of like you said, a lot of these cases are true and they're real, but you've written it in a fictional way. I do a lot of true crime. I've written a few books myself in true crime.
Best-selling #1 author in true crime.
I've written one or two.
Yeah.
And so, but the down thing about writing the true story and all that stuff is, it is what it is. You're right. I can't really change who they are, what they did, and how it ends, and what kind of justice gets served, if any. Whereas at least you can when you fictionalize it. Is that sort of why you went that way?
Yeah, that's part of it. And the other part is it gives me more of an opportunity to develop my characters and to give them a lot of background and to make them a little more fun. On true crime, you are really limited to the investigators and who they are and how they are. And you really can't deviate too much. That would be totally unfair to them. A fellow named his last name is Jackson. He's a former LA detective. He just wrote a book called Black Tunnel, White Magic. And it's a true crime story about a homicide in Los Angeles. And it's a pretty good sized book, pretty lengthy book. And he does a good job. It's very detailed. And sometimes in true crime, and again, it didn't have the same allure for me. You're limited on the crime itself. And if you're going to be true to the true crime, the genre, you have to stay there and you have to stay with what you've got. And I think it's probably a harder book to write because you want to make it interesting to your reader, but you have to stay true to the crime because it's not true crime if you don't.
That's true. And a lot of times I stay away from I don't get into the gore myself. I don't really write into all that sort of subject, and a lot of other authors do, and they do it well.
Yeah. I personally, there were two things for me. One, on the second book I wrote, it's loosely based on a homicide of a 13-year-old girl and kidnapping and murder. And knowing who I am, where I'm from, where I've worked, it probably wouldn't take too long to figure out what was the original case that was the impetus for the story. I also don't want to have her family pick the book up if they do and look at it and, oh, that was my sister, or that was my daughter, or that was my, whatever, my cousin, and have this detailed, horrible, gory. It's like Quentin Tarantino. I think Quentin Tarantino is a brilliant writer and a brilliant director, and I really like his stuff. But sometimes in his movies, you hit somebody on the head with a hammer and kill them. I get it. The 27th hit with the hammer is probably overkill. So I think sometimes people get caught up in the gore. And I don't want to do that to the family. I don't want to do that. I don't want them reliving this horror show on my book. I just want to have it happen and be the catalyst for the story, and then make the story interesting.
I think that's part of the Gallus humor, that whole getting it out. Probably some of it anyway. I don't know.
Well, it is. It is a stress reliever on the job. There's no question about it. You see bad things, and some of the things that get said and done are probably offensive if they were outside of the purview of that particular moment in time. So you write about it. You got to be careful. You put something like that out there, you offend somebody. It's like you don't want to get too political in your story either, no matter how you personally feel, because 50% of the people like your guy, 50% don't like you guys. So you just lost 50% of your audience. So you want to write it so that it's entertaining and try and not step on too many toes.
Well, listen, so the books are out now. Do you do social media? Do you have a website? Where do you like people to find you?
The website is called goldengatetales.com, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and TikTok, variety. Yeah, I guess that's about it. But the Golden Gate Tales, and on Golden Gate Tales, there's also like a forum. And if somebody has a question, they can certainly stick it on there. And I'm not going to necessarily guarantee I'll get to you in 24 hours, but I'll try and answer it. I'll try and be as responsive as I possibly can and answer your question as honestly as I can.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all that up on our website as well, so people can find you easily and go from there. Are you got any plans or book signings or shows or anything you're going to?
Yeah,
or anything?
On January, the next one is January 10th. It's going to be at Book Passage in Corte Madera in Marin County in San Francisco Bay Area. It's a great store. It's been there forever, and they, as a matter of fact, they host a couple of writers' conferences there, and they have what's called In Conversation, where they get an author and they have a moderator, and you're on stage for about an hour where they ask you some questions and then open it up to the audience to be able to answer, which is kind of fun. I like the interaction with people and being able to answer their questions and talk to them. And I think that's the best part. So I'm really looking forward to that. And the reason I look forward to it is I was down there a couple of months ago, and they had Michael Connelly as the in conversation person, and he was great. It was and I learned from the Q&A from the audience. I actually picked up some good advice that he had when he was answering questions. So I think anytime you go and listen to somebody else and you hear what they have to say, or someone asks you a really good question that makes you think, then that helps you on the next book.
Yeah, you grow from it. Well, we appreciate you being here. The book, Greed, our guest, the author of that, and a few other books. Look them up. Brian Brady, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.